Hey, it's been a while. Gotten not a whole lot done, but the engine is close to being started. Still waiting on a few things, and I'll just catch you guys up on what I've gotten done to sort of prepare for the engine start, and then just some other odds and ends I've been tying up. So, without further ado, here we go. First things first, I want to talk about the landing light wig wag function. So in my last video, I talked about the Baja Design Squadron Pros that I put on here. Super bright, way brighter than the Kitfox air LEDs option, but the problem is they don't have an onboard circuit that can do a wig wag function. So I came up with, or I found another solution on the internet. It's called a FlyLEDs Wig Wag Module from FlyLEDs or Flyboys. I think it was like 60 bucks. And I just scavenged all the original wiring from the Kitfox wig wag switch and had to put one extra little short, probably foot and a half piece of cabling with 3 leads on it, and split up some of the Kitfox wires, plugged it in, and I now have the correct switch, or the switch in the panel is the same one that Kitfox provided, and it runs the wig wag function. So it was actually a little tricky for me to understand wiring diagrams. I don't know anything about them. I'm not an electrician, not going to pretend to, but this is what they provide. This is the setup that I like, because in the panel, the pre-wired panel, it came with a landing light switch and then a wig wag switch. So that's what I'm maintaining. I don't have this. If you read this, it says it needs to be a DP-DT, dual pole, dual throw. I'm actually doing a dual pole single throw so that I can turn both the lights on at the same time. I'll do a video on this once I finish the system, but I'm still waiting on the switch. It was kind of hard to find. Either way, wig wag is up and running. It's configurable, super sweet setup. Very easy to scavenge the Kitfox wiring, and then I can still go back to the original air LEDs with, you know, a few crimps here and there, and it'd be back on track. So here's the actual wig wag module. I mounted it to this little strap here. It's very tiny and weighs almost nothing. All I had to do was put a ground lead right here. This is a ground wire, and I ran it to this bus bar, and then a 3 lead here, one's for the left light, one's for the right light, and then one's for the actual wig wag switch over here. I pulled out the original wig wag wiring, and then I had to split the 2 landing light leads, and so that they're going on their own pole on a switch. So still don't have that switch yet, but when I get it together, I'll show you. Also, my battery's dead, so I'm waiting to charge that before I run this. All right, if you watched my last video, you know that I was really butthurt about this dilemma with the rudder. Because I got the speedster tail option, basically what the speedster tail forces you to do is put if this is the back of the plane and this is the rudder, typically they're pretty snug. But with the speedster tail, you have to put this cuff on, and that cuff goes right over your ribs that are basically set to depth. And I just basically fit that fiberglass cup over the ribs to fit, and that ended up kicking the rudder out a little further than the non-speedster tail option. So because it's further out, this displacement is actually a larger angle, and you end up making contact with the rudders on the backside. So apparently it's a common problem. I was worried that I'd have to do some welding. Turns out it wasn't that hard to fix. I was just really butthurt about it and was tired when I made that video. I thought I was gonna get the rudder on, just like bolt it on and have it good to go, and then do a quick video about what I had caught up on, and I realized, oh gosh, I got another problem, and it really put me in a bad mood. It's fixed. What I did to solve it, I didn't actually have to weld anything, but I just tapped holes in the actual rudder. I had to get way in there with an extension, and I drilled holes and then tapped them with 1032 screws, and used those screws to basically extend the distance instead of adding anything onto the stops. Now the stops hit those screws, and I still have the correct amount of motion. It probably has, at the closest point, it probably has maybe 1.5 to 2 inches of clearance. So it could have a little bit more throw, but, geez, what was that? I'm shooting across the street, classic Florida. Yeah, so it could have more throw, but I'm not too worried about it. It's got plenty of deflection, and it doesn't make contact, which is the most important part. So I'll put a picture up of what I actually did, but it ended up being a real non-issue. I just was not happy about coming across that. So all the hardware back here is put on now. So I actually have to go through, I might pull this rudder off one more time to go match paint colors for my flaperons. But this isn't mounted, but everything else back here is now on and tight. So my elevator is in place. I ended up having to re-rig it, and I'll show a brief demonstration of what I had to do and sort of some issues I had with that. But either way, all the struts are locked in place, the bearings are all in place, and then the actual elevator is mounted to the stabilizer, and the stabilizer has its trim basically connectors on. So I did the upholstery on my seat pan and center console, and I used this Gorilla Glue because I looked on the forums and they were recommending some 3M material. I couldn't find it. I did find some online, but it was going to take like 3 weeks to get here, so I looked at another one and it said that this Gorilla Glue would work for upholstery, and it totally sucks. I followed the instructions. It says wait 1 to 3 minutes for putting it together, and everything went down fine, it stuck fine, but it all ended up coming up and peeling, and everything's all wrinkled where I made contact. So I'm gonna leave this for now. I'll deal with the upholstery after I get it airworthy. For now it's fine. Doesn't really matter that much, so it's just a little wrinkly. But at the end of the certification process, what I'll do is I'll just take MEK, this is removable with MEK, and get the really good stuff and try it again. Hopefully it doesn't peel up this time. I'm not good with arts and crafts, so this wasn't exactly my forte. I might just take it to an upholstery shop and have them redo it too, but that is to be determined. Since airworthiness is not affected by upholstery, I'm not gonna worry about it until after we're certified and ready to go. Okay, so here's what I'm talking about for the control sticks. I had rigged this without the panel in, without the grips on, and without the seat in, so I wasn't aware of those constraints when I was doing the rigging. That's what the instructions said, at least. And when I put all those things in with seat cushions and stuff, I realized that it was rubbing on the back end, and then recently I realized that I would have scraped the panel completely. What I did was I adjusted the stops and then extended the throw at the aft screw about 2 turns just to get it back on the right angle. Based on the physical constraints of the cockpit, I'm short 2 degrees on the, on the nose down side, so that when the elevator is down, full down deflection, it's actually 2 degrees shy of what they recommend. I think I should be okay, but I can't really get this much closer to the panel without having problems. If it ends up being a problem, I could probably take 1 turn out of this rudder, this elevator stop, but this is set and ready to go now. All right, so oil hoses are all in and installed and ready to go. I actually have oil in the system now. I'm going to give a brief summary of what Steve put together for me. These are all stainless braided, PTFE lined with integral fire sleeving. So they're super hardcore, solid stainless fittings, stainless hardware all the way around, and they're good for 10 years. Pressure tested and rated up for 10 years. And you can get these from Steve at Aircraft Specialty. He has a whole kit for the whole 912 IS. All the hoses basically that you need, he has them, stainless braided and everything. So this is 01, goes from the outlet on the oil reservoir over to the top of the oil cooler thermostat, and then that flows down. There's the 2 ports for the oil cooler down there. These are just AN8 fittings. And let's see, I guess this is the input on the oil reservoir. This comes basically out of the bottom of the thermostat, wraps around. Then the outlet, this is 03, comes back up to the oil thermostat. There's this sweet 180 fitting and a straight connector on there that comes out of the thermostat and then runs alongside the engine over the water lines like it says in the manual and to the pump here. And then of course it runs through the engine, lubricates all of the main points, comes out of the bottom of the engine and back into the reservoir there. All right, so those were the last hoses I needed to get this thing started. And I'm just chasing down a few other things that I now realize I have to do. But the hoses are all good. So this actually has fluids in it. It has coolant and oil. And I also have fuel. I haven't put it in, but I have fuel ready, and all the fuel lines are actually ready to go. A note on fuel. I was thinking, what can I burn in this thing? I'll put a link to a video that talks about RON, MON, and AKI. which are different octane ratings. The US publishes AKI ratings, which is an average between RON and MON. And so Europe, I think, has RON and US has MON. I don't remember which one's which. But what you'll see on the pump will be the AKI rating. And according to Kitfox, or not Kitfox, I guess Rotax, these 912 series will burn, the lowest octane rating they will burn is a 91 AKI. And that's straight from Lockwood's website. It's in the manual as well. And I actually found, I mean, you can burn ethanol fuel in here. It is rated for that, up to 10%. But I just don't want to push it. So there's a Walmart down the street that has 93 AKI fuel that's non-ethanol. So that's what I'm going to burn in this thing, at least to start. And I'll figure out what's going to go on down the road. These will burn 100 low lead. You just have to put, I think it's called Decalin. It's a de-leading agent that helps keep the lead, it settles the lead out in the oil tank. And because of the extra lead, it's kind of hard on, I think, the cylinder walls or something, or the valves. It clogs up something. You have to do more frequent oil changes. So I'm going to do everything I can to avoid burning 100 low lead, but of course, at some point, you know, you have to stop at an airport that only has avgas. Okay, while I'm up here, I'll talk about some things I'm chasing down with the engine before I get it started. So first things first, the battery, the lithium-ion battery, or I don't remember what the three elements are, but it's lithium battery that's made by EarthX that Kitfox sells. You can't just charge that with any old battery charger. You have to have a special lithium-ion battery charger, and there are different types that have certain settings to them. There's this like special reset setting that I'm actually going to need. My battery is down at like 11.9 volts, which is below, I think, the minimum recommended for an engine start. So I actually have to wait until my battery charger comes next week before I can even think about starting this thing. And that's just one of the things that apparently you should keep these things maintained. It's like you can actually just leave that battery charger on, it'll maintain the battery. I didn't know that. It'll go into, another thing to think about is that if you drain it down to that low voltage, it'll go into like a preservation mode. And you have to have either a special charger to get it out of that preservation mode, or there's all these like tricks to undo it. The easiest way, of course, is just to get that correct charger. I don't remember how much it cost. I think it was like $100. You know, it's just another thing to add to the list of miscellaneous goodies I need to purchase. But once I get that charged, then that whole battery side of things will be handled, and I'll be able to, in theory, start it. Now, another problem I'm having is my prop. As I mentioned in the previous video, you need a 2-inch prop spacer if you're going to run a Luga prop and the standard Kitfox cowlings. There are, of course, other hub setups, but if you're going to use like these 2 blades, from what I understand, pretty much all of them need some form of a spacer, whether it's exactly 2 inches or not. Is sort of up to the particular prop, but most of them are 2 inches from what I understand. I could be wrong on that, and Brandon has corrected me on that before, so call Kitfox. When I called Kitfox, I asked Deborah, and she didn't know anything about the Luga prop, which I thought was like one of the most popular 2 blades, so she couldn't help me with that, but I ended up reaching out to Nick. Thanks again, Nick, you're awesome. He told me I needed a 2-inch spacer, and I'm not sure exactly how to mount it. Since I got this from Ukraine, it didn't come with good instruction. If you put a 2-inch prop spacer, you need really long bolts to get all the way through this thing. So I'm not sure if the bolts have to go all the way through both sides of this, or if they can go through sort of the back side of this hub only, and then I can just hold the prop in with these 4 bolts. So I'm still chasing that down. I'll figure it out. I definitely don't want to start the engine with this as it is. I'm just using it to rotate it just to get the fluids going. But once I figure that out, then that's one of the last things required to actually start this thing up. Yeah, and apparently there's also special bushings and stuff that you can use for props. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I guess I'll call the guys in Sebring at Lockwood and see if they have any recommendations for what the best option is, and go from there. And I'll get my hardware, and that's going to take a couple days. So I foresee this engine start not happening for the next maybe week, something like that. But still looking forward to it. Here we are at the wingtip of the airplane, and I'll talk to you about my wingtip lights. So I finished wiring these guys up. The provided hardware that they give you, I guess connectors, let me go grab them. They're pretty big. I guess they're also probably waterproof, but I didn't use these. There's a couple reasons why. The first reason is they're big, so the wingtip, basically the light goes onto here, and the wire has to go through to the other side, this hole, which I drilled, and then it has to connect to here, there. So if you use this one, you either have to have a massive hole in here that would fit this, which is pretty big, which I guess I could have done here, but it would have been maybe 3 times as long, 3 times the size of this fitting. Or, once you put the wingtip light on, this is going to be stuck on this side, and you can't take it out unless you cut the cable and pull the light off. So I used my tiny little 4-pin Molex that I used on the Rudder, which I put a link up in one of my past videos, and connected this guy. It fits that hole a lot better. I can just drill a tiny hole, and it pokes all the way through, and will be easily removable. Now, the actual wingtip light is pretty straightforward. They have these brackets, and the light slides over them, and then there's a screw that goes in the back of the light, a little stop screw that will hold it, keep it from falling off. These, I'm assuming, are typically mounted into an aluminum plane or wood or something. This is this piece of plastic. It's like it's not plastic, it's fiberglass, a couple sheets of fiberglass. And I didn't feel comfortable putting like sheet metal screws or whatever you'd use to hold it down. And they didn't provide anything in the lights or the kit to hold it in place. You have to make sure that the hardware is flush mounted, because these little countersunk holes, if it's protruding at all, then the light won't slide over. So they fit into these little recessed areas. So instead of using screws, because I just didn't feel so great about that, I used rivets. So I drilled number 30 holes and then put rivets all the way through the thickness of this fiberglass, so through both sides, and then riveted it. And what I'm going to do before I paint it is lay some high sol in on the edges to make sure that it doesn't wobble at all, and that the lights are super bomber. For the lights, it's a last for lighting, and everything else is pretty much tied down. There's one last thing that I've put together, which is the ELT. Here's the ELT, mounts to these 2 pieces of channel steel. Then there's an antenna. There's an antenna right there, it mounts to that plate. And then this guy just mounts to its tray here, and there's some stainless straps that hold it in place. Let's look at it from the front. Bam. And the wiring harness that Nick made from Kitfox has basically all these leads hooked up. You just run this to the antenna, which it is, and then there's the actual, it's like a phone line, and then there's, this is the GPS connection, I think, or vice versa. Okay, I will say this was really hard to get in here after covering, because ideally you match drill it with this plate, and you'd get at it from the bottom. But now that this is covered, I mean, mind you, I put the baggage compartment in here after I did this. But even without the baggage compartment, it's hard to get a drill underneath there. It would have been easier to just come in from the side and drill them. But, you know, I made it happen. It's just, I also didn't have this prior to cover. I think this is one of the things that should be done before cover. And that's one thing they do say in the pre-cover checklist. You don't want steel shavings inside the fabric, because it could chafe holes. So ideally you have all the holes that you need to drill in the fuselage drilled prior to cover. They even say to drill out these cam lock tabs and, you know, seat belts and all sorts of reaming and stuff like that. So this would have been a good thing to have drilled prior to covering it. So anyway. Okay, so the Franken-Brakes system. Apparently I did some brainstorming with Steve at Aircraft Specialty and talked to him about what I've got here. I use the Earl Speed Flex line from Jegs and have a whole system built out with NICOP and stainless braided PTFE lined brake hoses. I asked him about my thoughts about the hardline, and it is good to have hardline, but he says it's not really necessary given the how robust those PTFE cables with the stainless are on them. So we're going to pull out all the NICOP and we're actually going to redo the whole system with solid stainless fittings instead of these stainless plated fittings, so that they, you know, it's humid down here in Florida, so these will corrode in like 3 years. So we'll do solid stainless, and then I'll just cut out this whole NICOP setup and do a straight stainless run. It'll be like 70 inches long or something from the parking brake all the way down to the brake cables. And that should be done, hopefully I'll tackle that this week. But other than that, I mean, this system is fine as it is. And on that note, if anybody wants to buy this from me, I'll sell it to you. It's perfectly good as it is. It's way better than the PTFE stuff. the just cheap plastic cable that they give you, and it can be mixed and matched. Like you can just take all the speed flex lines and then do a replacement from Earl's for that last run, or you can keep the 9-cop or whatever. But if you want it, let me know and I'll send it to you. I'll sell it to you because I'm going to pull all this stuff out. All you need is the AN3 nipples that go into the brake master cylinders and then in the actual calipers. Anyway, thanks for watching, and hopefully the next one we'll have the engine turning.